Pleasure to welcome you to this week's CodeX group meeting. Before I introduce our speakers, I want to turn it over to you and see if anyone in the group has any updates to share, any news to share.
I'm glad to say World University and School is matriculating its second undergraduate class this September 1st, and law schools to come. Great.
Thank you, Scott. And yeah, Lance also, he's published a number of AI and law-related articles over the summer. And he was invited to write a weekly column on AI and law for the Daily Journal. So so that's great to hear, Lance. Congratulations. Anyone else, any news to share with the group? Rachel, you raised your hand. Rachel, please speak up. Rachel, are you there?
Yeah. Hi. Sorry, had to mute. Yeah, I'm starting a PhD at University of Nottingham's Horizon CDD program, looking at digital economy. So yeah, 4 years of research and hopefully gaining insights from you guys and best practices and all that jazz.
Fantastic! Congratulations. So is that a research program? And what are you focusing your research on?
So yeah, basically I'm looking at how to help police detainees using digital technologies. And I'd like to personally focus on AI and the intersection with the law. So hopefully it'll marry up quite nicely and provide some interesting insights.
That sounds like very interesting work, and I hope you will present about it at some point in our group meeting.
100%, thank you.
Great, thank you. So Bruce also has an update. Bruce, go ahead, please.
So thanks to Roland and to Mike, we put in some comments to proposed rules that the California State Bar has put out for public comment on the viability of non-lawyers, such as legal tech apps, for closing the gap on legal access to legal services. And I'll put in the chat an article that ran in Bloomberg Law that says that our voice was in the minority, but very necessary. Seriously. And
I have to read that. That's good. That's good to know. It was good to put in our voice into that. Obviously, we were advocating for relaxation of the rules around fee splitting. We want legal tech innovators to get a fair share in the social value they're creating. And so we wrote a letter, and the thanks really belongs to Bruce, who really took the initiative for us to submit our comments there. So thank you, Bruce. That was really
great. Even though we are the minority report here, Roland, it's a strong voice, and I'm really glad that we put it in. So thanks to you and Mike and the law school for letting us do it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bruce. All right, so Miriam had also an update. She just started full-time work with a company in the AI space. Congratulations, it's great to know. Yeah, I hope it has to do with legal AI, but if not, that's okay too. And then, yeah, Michael is just supporting our submission to the bar. Thank you, Michael and Peter. Let's see. All right, so Peter has an update on the Legal Tech Index. Peter, you want to pipe up?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everyone.
Hey.
We've been working with a team of 4 over the last 3 months to kind of do a refresh on the dataset, especially checking who's still alive, who's dead, and also expanding the information we have. We've done some backend changes on the site, and we're about ready to import it. So we're going to add another 400 records of like really clean information on legal tech companies. In addition, we've been working on a subset of this data, US companies that are early stage, that are still alive. And we essentially did a study on the diversity of the founders. And so this was a study done originally in 2018 by Kristen Sunday. We will start incorporating that work, making it part of our data set. And it looks that in about 3 to 4 weeks, we'll be fully ready with the 2 reports, which will provide an amazing insight in a decade of legal tech. So I'm very excited about it.
That's fantastic, Peter. Thank you so much. And also, I hope you can present the report to this group. I'm so thrilled to have Peter lead this effort. He basically started the legal tech legal tech index database as a project for students to learn how to code several years ago. And it's grown tremendously, and it's become an important resource for anyone who wants to learn about early stage legal tech innovation. And I really am so grateful to Peter to keep, updating and improving that resource. And anyone in this group who has a company that should be listed on it, please let Peter know or let me know, and I'll connect you with Peter. And yeah, if you want to, there might be other ways that you can contribute to the database. And if you think you could, then but you maybe have some interesting data sets or something along these lines, then please let us know, and we'd love to make this database even better and even more relevant. So please let us know. Thank you, Peter. Thanks for that update. Marianne has an update too. So Marianne from Australia tells us the Australian government has developed a set of principles for AI ethics. That's great. Professor Williams is affiliated faculty with our center, one of the world leading experts on AI, and has focused a lot of her work also on explainability of AI and ethics in AI. So yeah, thank you for highlighting this for us, Marianne. And she kindly put a link to it into the chat if you guys are interested. So, all right, well, thanks. This great round of updates. Really appreciate it. With that, let me turn it over to our speakers. We have 3 fantastic speakers lined up for you all today. We have Olya Kanevskaya from the CITIP at the University in Leuven. And she will be speaking about preserving integrity of standardization. Then we have Guangmian Kung, the founder of Keem, or I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's a new platform for analyzing reasoning and belief systems. So that also sounds very interesting. And then we have Brian Haney, who's a fellow with the Transatlantic Technology Law Forum at Stanford, and he will discuss his paper on intelligent software automation of procurement in accordance with the FAR. So we have we normally only have an hour. We're already 10 minutes late, so maybe we'll go a little bit of our time. But if I could ask the speakers to maybe concentrate their remarks to about 10 minutes and leave about the same amount for discussion, that would be fantastic. So with that, I'll turn it over to Olya. Olya, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much. I'm trying to share. Hi, you can hear me, see me?
Perfect, yeah. Good to see you.
Great. Good to see you too. I'm sharing my screen now, and I hope it works. You see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we do.
Yes. Perfect. Awesome. So thank you very much. It's really a great pleasure and a great honor to be here. I will try to keep within 10 minutes. I cannot promise it, but if I don't, please let me know that I'm over my time. Yeah, it's a really great pleasure for me to present my research for such a vibrant community. I've been following your meetings and blog posts for quite a while, so now I can present my own research. But unlike many meetings, I wouldn't be presenting any innovative products or solutions that I or somebody developed, but I will be presenting my PhD, which I recently defended in June 2020. So what I'm planning to do in the next 10 minutes is just briefly explain what my PhD was about and what's the reason that I actually did this research, and to highlight some findings and observations and some future challenges, and then just leave the floor to the questions. So I'm a trade lawyer by background, I have to mention, and for that reason, ICT standards were specifically interesting for me. So first of all, they were interesting because they're voluntary. They're certainly not law, unlike, for instance, standards developed by the governments, but they do have a lot of normative features, and they do impose a whole lot of normative obligations on the industry. And my favorite example is, for instance, a Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connection standard in a smartphone. So there would be no law which will actually oblige you to implement a standard in the phone, but as a phone manufacturer, if your phone doesn't comply with Bluetooth requirements or Wi-Fi or LTE, it's pretty much doomed to failure on the market. ICT standards have enabled a lot of new markets and a lot of new technologies. Think about the IP protocols, the web standards, and so on and so on. And especially, I think, with the pandemic, we're kind of realizing how important it is to be connected, how important it is for systems to be interoperable, for devices to communicate with each other, and that's what the ICT standards develop. And one of the most interesting issues is, of course, the question of intellectual property. So there is this constant war, if you like, between the owners of the patents that are essential for functionality of standards, the implementers of these patents. There are huge disputes on royalty rates, essentiality. So at least in August 2020, we had 3 cases, at least that I'm aware of, in states and in the EU, which discussed the essentiality issues, the injunctive relief, the question at which level of production chain should the licenses be issued, and so on and so on. And the last but certainly not least issue, which I found very important and very interesting, is that these standards are developed by many, many organizations. And I call them SDOs, Standards Development Organizations, for the sake of simplicity, and they all are different. And I think everybody is more or less familiar with ISO, with ITU, but there are also many hundreds, if not thousands, of informal organizations which develop standards that are pretty much important or that are part of standards that become important for ICT. There are standards traveling from one organization to another, members traveling from one organization to another. And it's actually these organizations that I focused my whole PhD on. So there has been a tremendous amount of great scholarship and great research by lawyers, but also by empirics on the patent policies of these organizations. But the other processes have been largely ignored, and especially by lawyers. But they're equally important. And these processes are, for instance, selection of the technology, decision-making when it's consensus-based or voting-based, membership, selection of membership, selection of leadership of SDOs, adoption of standards, and so on and so on. And very early research on standardization governance kind of assumed that, well, the processes of these SDOs are kind of the same, they mimic each other, and even more that established SDOs as ISO and ITU, they have very good processes, very legitimate processes, which everybody is happy with. But that's not completely true. So indeed, there are some common features like voluntary participation, experts who represent either themselves or their companies, but there are also new SDOs, and especially as the industry evolves, as we have new demands from the industry, we have sectors participating in ICT standardization, which we would have never imagined to be there. So think about automotives, agriculture, and 5G and IoT. So these procedures and the governance issues, they're becoming even more difficult, and it's becoming very clear that there is no one-size approach that fits all, each and every SDO. And especially in the last decades, there have been many attempts, and I'm going to talk about it a bit on the next slide. There have been many attempts to change the policies of these SDOs, to change the rules. And there have been many members and even regulators who were not really happy with these attempts and who challenged SDOs either in courts or in their own dispute settlements. So the problem lies with standards development lies intrinsically in the fact that there are always the issues of power dynamics and there are always the issues of strategic interactions. So we typically tend to think that standardization is about technical issues, but I don't think, and technical decision making, but I don't think it's actually a surprise when we start realizing that there are few companies which are really driving and leading standards development efforts. And it's in every field on standardization. If you take food labeling standards, manufacturing standards, but especially in ICT, it is important because of irreversible investments that the firms make when they select the technology to be included in the standard. And hence, a lot of issues of IPRs and antitrust, which have been litigated and discussed so extensively, are arising from there. So there have been recently cases and less recently cases where it was claimed that participants of standards organization collude to select one technology and not select the other one. There have been updates of the patent policies in the IEEE in 2015. There have been similar attempts made in the other SDOs which failed, but apart from this more technical and IPR issues, there are also some discussions which are indirectly connected to technologies, but which nevertheless can stagnate the process of standards and affect the outcomes. So I was kind of interested to see which are those, whether and which are the mechanisms which SDOs have to address these challenges, to address these internal concerns they have from the memberships, like changing the policies, and external concerns they're dealing with, for instance, by the changes in law or the changes in regulatory approaches. And so as a lawyer, what I first did, of course, was to look in the law, what does the law say about it? And I figured out that the law introduces some kind of principles that SDOs have to follow for their processes to be legitimate, not to violate antitrust regulations, not to violate trade law, and so on and so on. And those are the usual suspects like transparency, participation, openness, principles that are rooted in Western administrative law, but also in the very beginning of standardization organizations in the 19th century and the end of 18th century. But importantly, the legal requirements and regulatory frameworks as they are now, they're not well paced, they're not well fitted to current developments with ICT standardization. A lot of them, for instance, the WTO framework doesn't even address the IPR issues, which are becoming crucial. And moreover, the legal requirements they introduce, they're not strict. They're formulated very vague. It's not clear what is transparency, when are the processes balanced. And they're left conveniently vague for SDOs to implement and to adjust them, to fine-tune them to the frameworks. So I then looked at what are the rules of these SDOs, how do they implement those frameworks, and I hate honestly showing this table, but this is just for you to have an indication of how I try to look at different processes, which are the members, who sit at the committees, who select the members. And it's kind of not surprising that the self-regulatory institutions, they implement the law, they implement the rules to the extent that is comfortable for the members. But at the same time, and I think the good example is the Bluetooth, I'm not sure if you can see it here, but Bluetooth, for instance, the Bluetooth special interest group doesn't have the appeal procedure or appeal body to handle technical procedural appeals. So with that in mind, I kind of tried to see what does it mean for practice? Are the engineers who are going to those meetings actually happy with what's happening, with how the policies and the operational frameworks of SDOs work? So I did a number of case studies, and surprisingly, and for me it was surprising because I always believed that the lawyers care about the process and the engineers care more about the outcome and the quality, but also the engineers appeared to care about the process because they do believe that it contributes to the quality and wider acceptance of the standards. However, most of the problems and most of the disputes arise when parties feel excluded or are excluded, either because the technology is not adapted, because they feel that they are not heard, and this is what creates this power dynamics, and this is eventually what stagnates innovation in SDOs. So I try to see also in my future research, what can we do, which mechanisms are there then to make standardization resilient, to kind of preserve the integrity of standardization, even though we have a lot of geopolitical challenges, intellectual property concerns. and what can we do about that? So I was a firm believer, and I am a firm believer, that SDOs have a sort of self-correcting mechanisms in place where they can fine-tune the procedures and make the members happy and address the possible exclusion. But this mechanism should be placed, should be working, should be put into work. And one of the things I was actually suggesting is to improve the feedback mechanisms in SDOs by, for instance, implementing functioning appeal processes, which are currently not available in many SDOs. Neutral and impartial appeals are very important. And also enabling access to courts so that the procedures of SDOs can be either challenged or scrutinized against the law. And this is also currently not available in many SDOs because the litigation costs are very high. Another thing I suggest, as from the lawyer point of view, is the redefining the principles and looking how we can change the law and how we can make these principles preferably more stricter, or perhaps how we can define them differently. And the last thing is clarifications from the governments, which can, for instance, kind of steer SDOs in a correct direction of what to do. It has been tried with IPR policies from US and the EU perspective. Recently, there has been a clarification from the Department of Commerce regarding US firms doing businesses in Huawei, with Huawei after Huawei's listing on ERR. And the last thing I'm curious about is, what if we take this human element away from the decision making? What if instead of firms choosing technologies and competitors choosing and voting out their competitors' technologies, we will have this process automated and selected by technology? And this is not the area I am very much familiar with, so I'm very much curious to hear if it makes sense, and what do you have to, what do you have to say about it, and if there is any other feedback. And I guess I went over my time a lot.
No, this is great. No, you're great.
No,
okay. So Bruce is asking, I wonder what your research reveals about how governments and the tenders and procurement policies enfranchise the old technologies for which SDOs have created moats around their old business models, practices, and technologies. Also wondering how antitrust figures into SDO's roles.
Okay, I'm reading the question. So I didn't as such look at the procurement law, I have to say. I only looked, being a European lawyer, I only looked at the European procurement norms for ICT standards. And this is where I also found that there is very little clarity about that. So European Union, typically the European Commission sets the rules how to select the standards, the ICT standard that can be used for EU procurement purposes, but that's as far as it goes. And the second question.
Rachel's asking, how does this play in, in innovation and patenting, as technical innovations often stem from technical bottlenecks such as those you have mentioned?
Well, very often, thanks for the question. Very often what's happening is that the firms from the side of the patent owners, they invest in the R&D, and very often, as I understood from them, they really develop technologies to be adapted into that standard. And they really innovate with the thought that their technologies will be implemented into a standard. While, of course, from the other side, the manufacturers, the implementers of the standards, they are precluded from access to those technologies, while when the royalty rates are being set too high, or where the license, or where they just simply don't know that they're essential technologies in the standard, and they're informed about it later when they already made a decision to include those technologies.
Got it. And Marianne's asking, taking a human-centric perspective, what are the pain points for the members? How might they provide insights to design an effective feedback mechanism?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I actually tried also to make a survey among the members to see, the members of some SDOs, to see whether they're happy and what would they, what would they suggest to improve the feedback mechanism and to improve the processes. What I think is important is that members are aware of the rights and procedures, and this is not always the case. A lot of members simply don't know that there is a possibility to appeal a decision, or a lot of members simply don't know that they think the organization operates according to consensus, but actually it's voting, or another way around. So what members can do, first of all, is read very well the procedures once they join organizations, and try also to use the rights as to the extent possible.
Okay. Great. Lubomir is asking, how are SDOs funded and by whom?
That's also a great question, because that ties into another issue. Some of the SDOs actually sell the standards, which is very weird given that a lot of standards, and well, I'm talking now not only ICT, but generally, are actually implemented in law and have to be used to show compliance with law. So the funds can be from the selling of the standards. In Europe, the European Commission funds some institutions. Otherwise, it's mostly the membership fees, which can be different for membership categories and or for companies.
Okay. Well, great. Well, if there's no more questions, then let me thank you for your great presentation.
Thank you.
And
thank you very much.
It's been great to have you. And so is this, where are you with your PhD? Are you about to finish, or it's finished already?
So the PhD is finished. It was defended in June. I think I was one of the first defenses after the COVID time. But of course, it's a research which is still in progress, and there are always new issues which I'm discovering. Right. And now I'm trying to make a book out of it. So
yeah,
somewhere there.
This is Susan. If fascinating. If you do publish a paper, please drop the link on our Facebook channel. So
oh, great! I will. I will.
Yeah. And maybe if you could, I mean, I think you had your email up there. So if people have follow-up questions for you, maybe you just put it in the text one more time so people can reach out to you. This is very interesting work, and really appreciate you sharing it with us. It's very important from a legal innovation perspective. So very much appreciate you joining us, and good luck and congratulations on having completed your PhD.
Thank you very much.
We'll give you a round of applause, and thank you again for joining us. And we'll turn it over to our next speaker.
Yes, and that will be me.
Yes.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Hey, thanks, Roland and Susan, for the invitation.
Thanks for joining us. Where are you joining us from?
I'm actually in Singapore at the moment.
You're in Singapore. Okay. Yeah. What time is it there?
It's 5 a.m. in the morning.
Oh my God. Okay. Are you still up, or you're already up?
I was planning to be already up, but I'm still up.
Oh my God. Well, I really appreciate you joining us, and we're excited to learn about your project.
Yeah, no problem. So let me get started since we don't have a lot of time. Let me put up my screen. Okay, let me know when you can see the screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So once again, hi everyone, my name is Guangmian. I am here to talk about Diqim, which is a project that I've been working on for a few years now, undercover. And in the past year, I started to really start working on the user interface around it and really building it to become an analysis tool for law and philosophy. So I'm actually an engineer by training, but someone who happens to have an interest in law and philosophy. Normally I'm based in Amsterdam, but currently I'm back in Singapore due to the virus to spend time with family. And previously I was actually working in Amsterdam for 6 years with a company called Adyen, which is a payment technology firm headquartered in Amsterdam. So with my background, some of you might be thinking, what am I doing with something like Diqim, right? So actually it dates back to my night classes in philosophy a few years back, which I took as a hobby. And as an engineer, I was very quickly frustrated at the lack of tools that can be used for capturing and analyzing ideas on the fly. So after searching some time for a solution on the market, I decided, you know, why don't I just give this thing a try myself? And that was the start of Diqim. And before I go into the product, I need to introduce a very strange concept, which is what I call a hinge twig, which is my way of what I think is the best way or a new way to look at beliefs and ideas. So imagine you have something like this, a belief about a situation, which consists of two conditions leading to a something that you say about it. And I propose that some of the best ways to look at this is to actually see as something like this. So this is something that doesn't make sense in reality, but it's a little mock-up that I made with the toys of my niece, because I couldn't find a better way to illustrate this. So I call this thing a hinge twig, which is basically a rigid structure with 3 or more things acting as hinges. So imagine if you have one of them like this, and with the help of gravity and hooking them together, and you pull one of those hinges to the top, you will see that the whole assembly falls into a certain position, right? And you could use this I propose that you could use this as an analogy for how to derive conclusions about hypothetical situations in a mass of rules. And if you pull up another end of the whole assembly, the whole shape will change again, right? And that is the basis of the teaching, which is the inference framework that I built. And it has, while it has several applications in education, where it can be used to analyze rules and ideas, in legal practice, where it could be used to generate legal advice automatically, or in product management, where you could use to generate or come up with decisions that span multiple departments. I'm only going to focus on the education piece today, which is the team for education. Why is that so? Because I believe in education, especially in law and philosophy, for students like myself. I think that there is a huge demand for these kind of tools, either for discussion, for deconstructing complicated ideas to make it easier for large groups of people to understand what the different viewpoints are, for automated grading of assignments, because that has been something that has remained very difficult to do in the humanities, and it can take teachers and lecturers a huge amount of time to assess the work of their students. And finally, for students who need a little bit more guidance, or who don't really agree with what the teachers are saying, having something that can systematically break down what is exactly wrong with the reasoning will be of great help. So I'm going to show you first how DSHIM can help with discussions. So imagine you are trying to explain to a student why God necessarily exists, or trying to explain why the defendant is not guilty. You can use DSHIM to break down your reasoning into rules, which is what you see in the middle here. Then on the right side, you see a testing interface where you could do a free explore of the implications of any hypothetical situation implied by the rule set, or find answers about a certain situation, as you're seeing here. And lastly, there is a feature for you to prove theories. So over here, you see that I'm trying to see whether the premise at the top leads to the conclusion here. And it seems that, yeah, it is true. And you can also have the explanation for the implications laid out as prose, which can then be copied over to your essays or emails or to your chats. Next up, we have grading of assignments. So in law, many people are working on IREC assignments, which is basically the issue, rule, analysis, and conclusion assignments. And in philosophy, sometimes you have huge essays trying to argue for a certain point, right? And yeah, honestly, I think that most of us, by the time we get to the second page, we already forgot what is on the first page, right? So trying to check for the coherence of the argument across 20 pages or even an entire book is extremely challenging. So DSHIM has the capability for you to speed up the grading of such assignments, either by using the theory testing capabilities that I showed just now, or if you're dealing with very structured assignments where you have predefined the vocabulary that can be used, it can also grade the rule systems that your students come up with for completeness and correctness. And lastly, for guiding students, it can be very laborious to try to help students who are not able to understand what you mean or understand what they did wrong in their reasoning. Especially in coronavirus times where the FaceTime is no longer something that we can have as much as before. You can use DSHIM to do things like what I call a blind check. So allowing students to work on assignments while being continuously guided throughout the whole process. So this really blurs the line between what we normally see as instruction and what we call assessment, right? So really guiding students, seeing learning and understanding what they're doing as the goal rather than aiming for just a final point where they get the grade. So in summary, the team has solutions for discussions where it can be used as a sketchpad for testing and analyzing ideas. It can be used to grade and mark assignments. And it can also be used as a continuous guidance tool for your classes, especially in these times. And for those of you who are teaching, you might immediately think like, okay, sure, that's nice, but yeah, we are already struggling to keep our class in the air. Coronavirus is causing us to, is forcing us to replan our whole curriculum. You know, there is no time for innovation. Then I would say, you know, the team is really designed to be incrementally adopted. Whether if you have no time at all to try out new tools, you can introduce the team as a personal tool to your students, you know, for personal use, without officially incorporating it into their classes. If you have a little bit more time, feel free to incorporate it as an analysis tool and use it over Zoom to explain ideas and allow students to share their reasoning with each other. And if you are feeling very adventurous, you can also move your entire teaching onto the team platform, where you can use the permission systems that is built into the team to set, issue, submit, and mark your assignments. About the technology, the team is actually, the inference engine is built natively for law and humanities use cases. It is meant to be paraphrase proof. So whether you're phrasing the ideas in this way or that way, it is able to see them as being equivalent and come to the same conclusion. It is also immune to rule sequence. So when you enter a new rule, you don't have to worry about, okay, is this conclusion that this rule comes up with due to this, its place in the whole rule system, or is it because of the rule itself? The team handles the rules in a sequence agnostic way, which makes it gives you a great peace of mind when you're dealing with hundreds of rules. And lastly, it is also domain and language agnostic. So it will work as well with Japanese, Spanish, Chinese, as well as, you know, analysis about philosophy, recipes, so on and so forth. And it can also handle up of hundreds of thousands of rules in a single analysis with no problem, and it runs within your browser. So in a certain way, you can see the team as literally the closest thing that you have to law and language as code. It allows people to write language, human language, and really leverage the expressive capabilities of language itself to do coding. So students in law and philosophy actually get access to their own way of programming without having to spend time learning a very domain-specific language like Java or JavaScript or Python, which, while useful, is not directly relevant to the core field that they're studying. So how do you get started? You can just go to app.theteam.io, create an account, and you can get started with your rule system right away. I'm also inviting universities and institutes to pilot the team in your classes if you're interested. You might be interested to know that I'm really starting the first pilots next week with participating professors from the School of Law at the Singapore Management University. Also, the Singapore University of Tech on Design is going to use the team to teach philosophy to the tech students in the school. For those of you in the legal industry, looking to look at use cases for legal advice automation, I would love to have a chat with you to talk about how we could collaborate and flesh out this use case. And the first company to do this has already come on board. It is a company called Suyo in Medellin, Colombia, and they're going to use the team as a white label tool to democratize access to legal services for the poor in Latin America. And for those of you who don't really have a use case yet, but is just interested to have a chat, I'm also very happy to just exchange notes and talk. And with this is the end of my presentation. If you would like to reach out, here's my email address, and the project website is theteam.io, and feel free to follow me and our project on any of these social media channels.
Very cool. Thank you, Guang. This is very cool. And folks have a lot of questions for you. So Thibault also said fascinating, and 2 questions. Where's the name coming from? And the second one you already answered, is there a possibility to try the team? So yeah, where's the name coming from?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the chim, the word chim is actually a Singaporean slang. So chim in Singapore, that we don't really have language, but we like to think that we have. The word chim actually means complicated, something that is extremely boring and complicated. And when you say that something is chim, it is almost kind of dismissive. Like, hey, this is too complicated to bring onto into polite conversation, so please stop talking. So de-chim is really meant to de-chim things, deconstruct complexity and make it accessible to everyone.
Got it, cool. Marianne's asking, how are the rules generated? What techniques drive the reasoning engine?
Yeah, so the rule engine is, it is entirely based on set theory. So it works based on truth tables and the rules that you write. How about I just put this on the screen? Yeah, I'm going to put up the, can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, are you able to see the chim?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is a rule system that I've made. Just going to go to the philosophy demo over here. Yeah, so each of these rules is basically a collection of prepositions grouped into an if-then group. Yeah, so each rule basically asserts certain, it makes certain assertions about the existence of certain sets of situations in the world. And based on that, when you do a test case, I would say, okay, so what about this subset of situations in this world? And do they exist or not? And based on that, it will derive the existence or the truth or the falseness of a certain statement. Okay.
Got it.
Yeah, you can also, and there are two major kinds of analysis you can do, correlation and causation. So correlation is basically just showing the relationship between ideas and rules, right? But it doesn't tell you how this one leads to this one. And causation analysis is where de-chim really comes into, where it really flourishes, because this is where you can test the relationships of ideas, how they lead to each other, and what happens when you, when you switch things up. Yes?
So the next question from Anatoly, I wonder if you answered that already now too. How does it actually work? Is it a graph, or what's the connection between the nodes? And how does the system really understand the root cause sequence from raw text? Are you hard coding this?
Yeah, so the chim basically makes the assumption that every statement that you make about this world is a qualified statement, right? So it is never true in itself. It is, even if you are saying it because you are saying it, right? So everything, every rule that you make about this world is it has to have a certain premise before the conclusions follow. Okay. So I like to say that de-chim always starts from the state of tabula rasa, where nothing applies, and you always need to say, okay, so where am I starting? Which subset of things am I looking at? And then the inference engine will start looking at, okay, what are then the relevant rules, and what is the set of situations that actually are still possible under this set of rules.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the interest of time, let's see. So Bruce, how is the content that you post on de-chim? Is it confidential? Can you see the content for purposes of proprietary projects?
Yeah, who can see the content of proprietary projects? Yeah, so everything is, there is a user management system built within de-chim. So everything remains private to your account. But of course, me as the admin, I can see, I will have database access to be able to pull information. But in principle, it stays within your account. But you do have the capability to share it as, to allow write or read-only access to your classes or to your colleagues.
Okay, and Ljubomir, Michelle is saying, can you apply this to news articles to extract the key premises implied in the articles?
Yeah, so this is a question I get asked a lot. So I need to make clear that the core technology of de-chim is not an NLP piece of technology. So it does not read, it is not meant to read text nor extract ideas from text. But I am looking at possibilities in the future to build that as a preprocessor to de-chim. So perhaps taking an article or a tweet and then converting it into rules and then using that for analysis. But at this moment, it does not have that feature.
Got it. Brian saying software is incredible.
Oh,
and,
thank you.
Alia is saying this looks awesome. How many languages does it work with, and are you planning to expand it to other languages?
Yeah, so the only limiting factor over here is the user interface, because the reasoning within the team is language agnostic. Yeah, I'm just going to very quickly flash something on the screen. Yeah, so you see this is a rule system that is built in, one second. Yeah, rule system built in Spanish, and it just works. You don't have to, because DCHIM doesn't deal with language. It deals with the logic within language itself. Yeah. So yeah.
And maybe the final question, because then we have to move on. Let's see. Does it explain the philosophical reasoning methods using to show and contrast how the same facts can reach different conclusions?
The same fact can reach different conclusions. Yes, I actually have a demo over here. Yeah, so here is a rule system that has basically, I hope you guys can see this. Yeah, so here you see two different archipelagos, right? The one on the left is by one philosopher, and the other one is by another philosopher. And because of they are both talking about the existence of God, because of the difference in the words that they use, there is no logical link between the two of them, right? So what you can do as a user of DCHIM is to draw connections between things like the thing in question in God is God, and the being in question is the maximally great being. You know, like you can put a what I call a mutual inclusion rule. Yeah, meaning, okay, these two terms actually mean the same thing. So with that, you will breach these two things and make this basically one big island. And then from there, the two islands start to have a deductive relationship between them, and then you can start making analysis.
Okay. And maybe Rachel's question is the very last question, because then we really have to turn over. Okay, well, actually, there's more questions coming in. I would maybe ask folks to maybe reach out to you directly.
Yeah.
Because Rachel had a question, Anatoly has another question. If you can just put your email into the text, that'd be great, and folks can reach out directly to you.
Sure.
We're running a little bit low on time.
Yeah, sure. Let me just put my email there. Yeah, so I'll be very happy to take questions via email, chat after the call, okay? I really don't want to take more time for the next presenter.
Guangmian, it was so great to have you. This is like super interesting, and really appreciate you sharing it with our community.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's a lot of people interested in continuing the conversation. So really, I would like to track where you're taking this, and I'm curious to see which one of those different use cases is the first one to get traction. And yeah, I look forward to staying in touch. Thank you so much for joining us. Staying up so late though.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Roland. Thanks for the invitation again.
Okay. Well, good to see you, and stay safe. And yeah, please share your email.
Yes, I will.
Thank you. All right. So next up is Brian. Brian Haney, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys see me, everybody?
There you are, Brian. Okay. All right, Brian. So over to you.
Cool. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna share the screen. Can you see it okay?
Yep.
All right. Okay, so today I'm talking about MAGIC FAR compliance, or Federal Acquisition Regulation compliance. So how the government can buy things in compliance with the law. So my name is Brian Haney. I'm a fellow at Stanford Law School at the Transatlantic Technology Law Forum. Basically, this research came out of a question I asked my third year of law school 2 years ago, which really was just how can I use law to help advance technology. And the result was a paper I published last summer on automated source selection scoring and FAR compliance. So I started with the problem. So a lot of great technologies are bought by the government. So the government buys things from Google and Microsoft and Amazon. but particularly with the Air Force because they're buying rockets and other cool space stuff. So the problem the Air Force came up with was that acquisition regulations and policies form an intricate maze that is impossible to navigate, raises costs, and prolongs the time to deliver capabilities. So I found that in an article, and then I set out to solve it. But I wanted to start by thinking about the problem from fundamental principles. So what are we actually trying to comply with, or what is actually happening here? And source selection really is just the process by which the government buys things. So the federal government is the largest purchaser of goods and services in the world. This year, they spent $6 trillion buying things, goods and services. And there are rules that they have to follow when they buy them, buy things. And those rules are called the Federal Acquisition Regulations. And Federal Acquisition Regulations are like 2,000 pages of really boring, contradicting text. But basically, all they really require is that the government purchase things in a way that allows them to get the best value for their money. And that makes sense, right? If government's buying things, it's a public good, we want them to get value for what they're spending their money on. And the way that the FAR prescribed to do that is through a factor-based analysis. There's a couple of different ways, but the majority is factor-based, which basically just means they're looking at the different proposals that they get for projects and breaking them down based on factors like price, past performance, technical capability, that sort of thing. So the problem that happens is, well, government has these rules that they have to follow, but they break the rules a lot. And part of that is rational ignorance. So there really isn't a lot of oversight for government agencies, nor the way that they spend money. So there really isn't any incentive for contracting officers or government officials to be cognizant of the rules in the first place. Another problem that happens is bad scoring. So sometimes agencies will define standards by which they're going to select a source to buy something from, and the framework that they come up with results in mathematically inaccurate conclusions, or they use a framework that they didn't prescribe in the solicitation. And then the third is political corruption. This is sort of just like the backdoor bribery. Congressman writes a letter to an agency to fund this company because the congressman has interest in that company. So if they get that contract, he makes out. And the reason that this is bad, among other reasons, is because it results in project delays and failures, and that results in as a blockade to technical development, which is what we want. We want to be the world leader in technology. So the reason that, or the solution I came up with is called Magic, and I'll play it for you. So on the left, you can see this list of factors. So the Federal Acquisition Regulations require that in all procurements, the government consider price, past performance, and technical quality. But beyond that, they leave a tremendous amount of discretion to agencies to do whatever they want. So three discretionary factors they might consider are the management capability, the firm's compliance with applicable statutes or regulations, and then the innovation for the proposal. And right now, so like the words you see there are good, acceptable, outstanding, that's the adjectival rating system that the government, the DoD uses to score proposals. And right now they sort of just eyeball it. So it's blind bidding for the most part. Proposals get sent in, source selection team looks at them, makes a decision. And the problem is they really don't know, like, how are you calculating value? What is value? And this provides a formal framework. So here, proposal one, based on the solicitations that, or the solicitation would be more valuable than proposal two. So the benefits of using this system, it's a statistical analysis supporting source selections. So, we have some numbers to support the value that we're getting. It's also transparent, so that'll help to improve competition. It's good for contractors to know where they stand. It gives an automatic structural integrity and objectivity to the decision-making process. So the idea is that'll help to reduce corruption. It also gives feedback to contractors. So a lot of times you'll have situations where you might have like 5 different people or firms that are submitting proposals, and contracting officer might not even respond to two of them, right? So, you know, having feedback for contractors so they know where they're doing well and not well would be helpful. And also streamlines data collection for strategic analysis. So really big problem with data management across the different government agencies. Finding different ways to streamline that process would be really helpful. And it would also save $153 billion. So that's probably an underestimate. I'm happy to talk about how I came to that number if people are interested. Objections to using a streamlined system for government procurement. Look, the government doesn't want to save, right? So even if you can save $153 billion, like that's not their goal, right? They're spending more and more money every year. Yeah, so, you know, we want people to have jobs, like those are sort of the arguments for why they shouldn't save. But at the same time, they should at least care about quality and efficiency and can help to improve that. Next is technology can't replace humans. So, you know, we have these teams of people that are working on making these decisions. You know, you can't just get rid of all those people, and not trying to replace humans, really just trying to provide a more organized information flow model and statistical support for these decisions. The next is, you know, you promised us magic, but, you know, that was an Excel sheet you just showed us. So I guess first is like, you know, cut me a break, it's just a prototype. The second, there's a lot of work that I had to do reading the federal acquisition regulations to develop an intelligent system to comply with it on the back end. And then finally, the model that I built out was scalable, and you can't do that with an Excel sheet. I tried. The last one is that, you know, look, bids are rigged on purpose. So like, this is all just politics at play here. To the victor goes the spoils. That's how the system works. And even if you can make the system better, they don't want it to be, because, you know, people are making an insane amount of money off of it right now. And so, you know, it doesn't really matter. Their effort is not worthwhile. And we sort of end up in this position, you know, where, you know, we have this, you know, ideal system of a tripartite system of government with checks and balances, but we ended up with the three-headed monster acting to suppress the people. And that's not good. So solution I came up with is to develop technology for compliance in Magic. So I developed a proprietary trade secret called source selection scoring using artificial intelligence. I'm happy to work with any government agencies to provide a free license or data, any other resources. This is a real problem, and I can help, and I want to help. So if there's an opportunity to do so, I am eager. But with that, just want to say thank you to CodeX and to the faculty at Stanford Law School, and thank you to Roland. Thank you to the audience as well. Otherwise, happy to help however I can. You can send me an email. My email is right there. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Great. So Lubomir is asking, what are the impediments to commercial implementation of this? Do you need federal government agencies as your buyer?
Yeah, so I guess really wouldn't need them as a buyer. I'm happy to give the software to them for free and work with them, but otherwise, yeah, they would need to sign on with it.
Okay. And Andre is saying, hello, Brian, how to define the variables to obtain the final evaluation value? Are there any standards to be complied with?
Yeah, so like I said, the three that the FAR require are price, past performance, and technical quality. So they have to analyze those three factors according to law. But other than that, they have complete discretion. They just have to define those factors beforehand. So the idea is to make the system flexible and heterogeneous so that the contracting officers can define those factors beforehand.
Okay, Bruce is asking, the FAR and the DFAR enfranchise the existing prime contractors and keep innovators out. How would you think innovation should be scored?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think that it's the FAR, the DFAR that are keeping contractors out. It's the people that are making these decisions and the politics behind it. So, I mean, if you want to score innovation higher, they can do that. And I think that they should, right? You should weight innovation higher, but at the end of the day, like, there's people that are making these decisions.
Yeah, Andre was saying, for me, the main difficulty is to define the variables and respective values and weight on the calculation of the final grade of the proposal.
Yeah, I mean, I would, is that a question or is there more information?
Well, it's a comment basis. It's a more comment, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what else? And how do you deal with the discretion of attributing the different scores?
Yeah, so there's like inherent discretion in the process. So regardless, you have to have some human looking at these different proposals and saying, hey, look, this is outstanding technical quality, or this is good innovation. So there's an inherent subjectivity there. But the idea really is just to provide a formal framework by which those decisions can be made.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Well, great. So we're pretty much at the end of our time here. This is very interesting too. Well, Pradeep, maybe a final question from Pradeep is, how do you deal with negotiations?
Yeah, so negotiations are tough because they're not really, there's like really strict rules for how those have to unfold. And it's difficult because a lot of those are backdoor negotiations. So, contracting officer goes to a company and they have a closed door meeting and discuss whatever it is they discuss behind closed doors. And the idea is then you sort of submit these proposals and then they make a decision based on this proposal. So if you can get to the table with them, you're way ahead of the game. So if you can get a negotiation, go for it.
Okay, so maybe two more questions. But since we gave you, want to give everyone about the same amount of time, we're going to go a little bit over time. So Michael said it would give regulators and oversight bodies thinking of congressional committees something to use as a baseline to analyze when questioning big contracts. It's a worthwhile endeavor. So also more about a comment. And Marianne is asking, could magic be used to game the process?
Could magic be used to game the process? Yeah, I mean, if you knew ahead of time what the score conversions were, yeah, probably. But the idea would probably be to keep the algorithm proprietary from the government side, and then have, I guess you can use blind bidding. I mean, that's what the assumption that the system is based on, that they would sort of stick with the same system. But if you wanted to change it the whole way, you could do that too, so that you couldn't be gamed. Like, you can make it transparent so everybody knows too. So it really just sort of depends on how you'd implement it.
Cool. All right. Well, neat. Great. Thank you, Brian. This is very interesting too, and really appreciate you joining us and telling us about your project.
Thank you, Rowan.
If you could put maybe your email again into the text so folks can reach out directly to you. Thank you to all the speakers today for your great work and sharing it with us. Those are all super interesting projects, and I'm really thrilled that you're working on these projects and you're sharing it with our community. And I think the discussion showed that people actually are very impressed with your work, and it sounds like there are going to be some follow-on conversations. So thank you all again. Thank you. Just a tiny bit over time, and yeah, stay tuned for our next meeting. I'll send out something. I don't know, Susan, do we have a session next week?
So next week is Labor Day week, so we're taking that off, give people a chance to get back into town, and then we'll be having our presentations in September. And check your inboxes, because we are sending out email for our exciting fall lineup of Meet CodeX and our speaker series.
Fantastic, Susan. Thank you so much. So I wish you all a wonderful Labor Day weekend. Hopefully it's going to be relaxing, and yeah, please stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you at the next session. All right, thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.